Ladies and gentlemen, this is it again, the Great Idaho Show, thegreatidahoshow.com. Today, June 24th, 2026, we're visiting with Idaho Department of Fish and Game, Roger Phillips, Public Information Supervisor, and Joe Kozfkay, the State Fisheries Manager. What is it all about? It is about the 4th of July. It is about family. It is about memories. It is about where to catch a fish in Idaho. Stay tuned. We're going to be talking about the many wonderful opportunities to catch a fish in Idaho, North Idaho, Eastern Idaho, Southwestern Idaho. It's like we have 3 states in one. Before we do not forget, this is it. Every show you will hear at Old Arms of Idaho. They are your ambassadors to America's heritage, the vintage Western military and firearms collectible specialist, oldarmsofidaho.com. So, let's get right at it. The way this is set up, we have Roger and Joe here. This is their show. This is the Idaho Department of Fish and Game saying, hey, where can we catch a fish? Where do we go from here, guys?
Well, I'll start off here because one of the things that I really like to emphasize with people is don't feel like this is a long, complicated, difficult thing. Everybody's got fishing gear or access to fishing gear. There's a pond probably within walking distance of your house or your community, or a bicycle ride or a short drive. You can start there. You can move to your local reservoirs and rivers, and then you can take some of the destination trips to some fantastic fishing throughout Idaho. May and June are our biggest stocking months of the year. We're putting rainbow trout throughout the state in all those places that I've mentioned. And there's just a ton of opportunities that people can go enjoy. They can make it as simple or as, I won't say complicated, but a little more logistically, challenging as possible. But there's just so many opportunities out there to kind of make your own adventure and enjoy what the great state has to offer. Unfortunately, we've got Joe here who really knows what he's talking about and can give us some details on that stuff.
Well, I think what I love about that, because I know if you've got nothing, you've got no equipment, no supplies, no fishing license. We'll talk about buying fishing licenses, folks. But within a 2-hour period of time, you could probably get to a tackle shop and find something close within your zone and be catching fish. Joe, where are we at on North Idaho, Western Idaho, Eastern Idaho?
Definitely, we're going to encourage people to go to those local tackle stores. They have that firsthand knowledge. They're up to date on what's going on in those fisheries. We're also going to tell people that we have a lot of field staff that know these fisheries really well. That can be tremendous resources to the public. We're pushing out press releases all the time with how these fisheries are doing. They're great resources of information. And then we have our website. On our website, we have something called the Fish Planner. And it's just a great tool to show people locations to go fishing. It's an interactive map center. It shares what species are at each of these various water bodies. It includes our stocking records, and it also includes where we're going to stock in the upcoming week. So if you're not sure where to get started, that's a great place that people can go to the web and peruse that site a little bit. Again, that's Idaho Fish and Game's Fish Planner. Just a great place to go. And Roger mentioned it already. For beginning anglers, we're going to point them to a lot of our community pond type fisheries. They're just very accessible. We stock them often. They also have warm water fish such as bass and bluegill that will readily take a night crawler under a bobber, or for trout, people catch them on marshmallows, garlic flavored marshmallows all the time. So
Sure.
Very easily accessible fisheries. And then our large rivers throughout the state are just additionally like great opportunities where we have lots of fishing and boating access sites. They're publicly accessible. We have very simple fishing rules in most places, and people can go to these locations and fish for, quite often, bass or trout or whitefish of the sort. Those are kind of the general opportunities that we see this time of year.
Okay. I got an idea. This is not scripted, folks. We've got two tremendous representatives of one of my favorite state organizations, Idaho Fish and Game. Roger, I know you get out. You've fished in most parts of these states. What do you think about we talk about Northern Idaho, where you've fished, where you love, just from a personal story, and maybe Joe to kick on in right after that, where maybe some local close to population areas where we can get out there and hopefully get one of those bright, shiny little 6-year-old, 4-year-old, 2-year-old kids catching a fish with a fair good bit of ease.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And North Idaho is kind of interesting because I fished it a long time ago, and then I got to go back and rediscover it here recently. And I really enjoyed the chain lakes there around the Coeur d'Alene, along the Coeur d'Alene River. We met a young gentleman down there who gave us a fishing clinic when we didn't really want a fishing clinic.
Oh, nice.
We know what we were doing.
Yeah.
And so you had your basic teenager down there who caught about a 3-pound bass right under the dock and caught several bluegill, where he said, well, this is a nice one. And it was about the size of your hand.
Yeah.
These are pretty big. I should say wouldn't even fit in his hand. And I caught my first pike up there, which was a very small one, but I can still add that to my life list. So that's one thing I really enjoy about North Idaho. You have the classic kind of trout streams where you can go, you can kind of get that mountain, atmosphere because they're in the mountains.
Sure.
A cool river. And then you can also go into just a tremendous number of lakes up there, from smaller lakes to the giant ones, and have an amazing variety of fish up there that you can catch, and some that are like the pike, which are a lot harder to find down here in the southern part of the state.
Yeah, I mean, pike fishing, running a Rapala up off the topwater and having a shark-type fish come up and take a bite out of that thing, those can get pretty large. What's the story on pike in Northern Idaho? Do we get some of those Alaska-style 20, 30, 40-inch pike?
Yeah, we certainly do. They were illegally introduced, and they've taken off in a couple locations in Idaho, especially in Coeur d'Alene Lake.
Sure.
And then Lake Pend Oreille. And in Coeur d'Alene Lake, they remain at a relatively low density. There's not that many of them, but they just grow very, very fast. And people have learned to catch them, especially in the springtime, where they fish dead baits in bays and catch them quite often. 40 inchers aren't uncommon, especially in the spring there. And then Pend Oreille is the same way. Earlier in the year and then later in the year, people do really well in some of the larger bays in those systems. And yeah, they really get people excited with the size and how fast they are and how much drag they strip from your reel.
Yeah, they get going. I was lucky enough to fish for them in Alaska in their native habitat, and you can see them from the air in close to the edge of the banks, when they look like a whale down there. But Joe, we were talking about stalking, and stalking is wonderful because, you can go out to, like you said, to close areas and not have to travel, and take 2 days or stuff like that. In the Northern Idaho area, which is such a wide subject, really. I mean, any suggestions for the areas,
Well, you asked what lakes we like to fish, and in Northern Idaho, I think I'd point people to a couple fisheries where we have really diverse fisheries there. They include trout, bass, panfish, and those would be Hayden Lake and Coquihalla Lake. They do have some shoreline access. They're generally better served with small boats or even medium-sized boats. But we have really good fisheries for largemouth and smallmouth bass, northern pike and crappie, as well as kokanee and trout at Hayden Lake. And then Coquihalla Lake is another good fishery where we have trout, some panfish, bass, and catfish. Those are both easily accessible and provide really good fishing for people in that area.
You know what I love? You talk about small and medium boats, and there's so many boat types that you can just go, little personal watercraft that you can go buy today that are fairly safe. And no, you don't have to. I mean, what does boat stand for? Bust out another 1,000. They get expensive, but you can actually go get some, pretty affordable watercraft to go out and fish and use an oars or the old-fashioned canoe even. You just got to go and even look on Craigslist or do things like that to get out there.
Yeah, certainly. You can get a small kayak for a couple $100, especially used, or a small flat bottom boat for a couple $100 off a marketplace. Then and those they just open up the number of avenues you have to getting to other types of fish and other locations on different waters. And we all know it's always just a little bit better if you can get a little farther away from where most people fish. So encourage people that are interested in that to, seek that out. And we've talked about the fish planner already, but
Yeah,
one of the things you
absolutely.
mentioned here is places to launch boat. We have about 400 fishing and boating access sites in the country. They're all locatable or visible on that fish planner.
Yeah.
Just search fishing and boating access sites with Idaho Fish and Game. We have from 40 to 90 per administrative region, so they're widespread. They can be really well developed and include, just a boat ramp and campgrounds and big docks to go fishing on, or they can just be small little parcels where you can access a riverbank just to fish off the bank. So tremendous opportunities, tremendous amount of public access we can provide people to get to these fisheries.
So the Idaho Even Hunt and Fish Planner, we're going to talk about hunting in the fall, hopefully, but where do we find this? Just Google, search Idaho Fish Planner, or what's the core website?
Yeah.
The website is idfg.idaho.gov, and if you scroll to the bottom, there's an icon for the fish planner there. But if you want the simple shortcut, Google Idaho Fish Planner, and it will come up.
Use that phone, do the search, let it do the finding for you. Just like the old yellow pages, it's digital now. It'll help you for sure. Joe, Northern Idaho, you're a fisheries manager, a stocking manager. If you were going to go out tomorrow, you're like, this is where I would go.
I'd probably send people to Kokolala. I think it just provides a diversity of opportunity for people. There's so many different species there to catch. It's easy access and it's pretty simple to fish. There are just so many places in all of our regions. It's almost hard to narrow it down.
Yeah.
And like I said, those resources that we're talking about, the access sites, fishing and boating access sites, and the fish planner really narrow that down. Some of those small lakes between Coeur d'Alene and Sandpoint, we've got Shepherd Lake, Kelso Lake. There's just so many opportunities to fish small lakes in that area.
Yeah, be adventurous. You could just almost close your eyes and pick a water source and go find something, it sounds like, which is just amazing, and hopefully find some campgrounds close by. I have this thing where I take out young ones and I'm like, pick anything you can find in that box and go for it. You know what I mean? Because I have no idea what I'm doing unless there's a fly on it. I mean, can we catch multiple species in a typical different lure scenario, or do you need to really imagine what you're fishing for and kind of guide towards that?
I think more seasoned anglers probably overcomplicate it. We buy more and more gear, and I think it's fun to go fishing with young kids like that, where you can just simple it down and just keep it to a spinning rod and a night crawler on either a jig or just under a bobber.
Sure.
And you can catch everything that's in those bodies of water with something that simple.
I mean, there's nothing to me better than a barrel weight, a swivel, 12 to 18 inches off a hook and something floating off the bottom. I mean, it gets warm here in the summertime and they want to get down and get cool if you're catching those trout species and stuff like that. Roger, let's go over to Eastern Idaho. I've just got to assume you've drafted a line in one of those bodies of water. What's a place that you are just in love with.
Yeah, and I'll ask Joe for an assist on this one. And I wanted to share a quick story too.
Sure.
Back to the simplicity of things. I got into kokanee fishing here a few years ago. And of course, I've gone down the rabbit hole of boat and multiple rods and lots of tackle and a downrigger. And last weekend I was out and I couldn't buy a fish. And I said, okay, let's try something different. And I grabbed an old spinning rod and a Castmaster lure, which is about as basic as they
Sure. I mean, been around for decades.
Yeah. And the only reason I got it is because I could throw it farther than the other lures in my box.
Sure.
And that was what I caught. About 15 minutes later, I caught a nice rainbow trout on it. So sometimes we're our own worst enemies by overthinking some of this stuff.
Yeah, just learn how to tie a good strong knot so you don't have that story of, oh, I missed it.
Yeah.
But
yeah, going back to Eastern Idaho, I love the South Fork of the Snake because it is a great place for cutthroat trout, which are one of my favorites. It's a beautiful area. All the rivers over there is where I like to concentrate on what I do best, and that's throwing a fly into a beautiful Idaho river and trying to catch some trout out of there. And as with all fishing, mixed success, but when it happens, man, you've really accomplished something special over there. So that's a really cool area. But man, there's a lot of other opportunities over there. Henry's Lake is fantastic, and more. And as I'm going to ask for an assist from Joe because again, he knows a lot more about these fisheries than I do.
Yeah, well, and I even like, that I grew up on that river catching cutthroat. My grandpa gave me my first fly rod at 9 years old, and I'd disappear at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they probably thought I was dead by the time that I got back. But I was lucky enough to fish during the trout fly hatch or whatever. I would, clarify for me. I told you I wasn't the expert. What fly? My grandpa called it a trout fly, but what fly is that? What hatch?
It's a salmon fly. Yeah.
Salmon fly. I mean, they're large. You can see them on the bushes and even just grab one and stick it on a hook. You know what I mean? But man, I was lucky enough to grow up with that and just had the best time. Joe, we were talking about that fork of the Snake, but what other opportunities, what other thoughts?
Well, I think Roger nailed it on the head there. That's also a really good brown trout fishery and mountain whitefish fishery. And the department's working pretty hard over there to control the number of rainbow trout that are cross breeding with Yellowstone cutthroat trout. So if people go over there, we really encourage you to harvest those rainbow trout. Some other fisheries that I'd mention that first come to mind are the Snake River closer to Idaho Falls. It has really good trout fishing around there. We've stocked hatchery sturgeon in the Snake River around Idaho Falls and downstream. And then there's even beginning, those have developed into really good fisheries around Idaho Falls, Gem Lake area. The one that first came to my mind, though, would have been Ririe Reservoir.
Okay.
It's up towards the South Fork there. We've got a tremendous kokanee fishery going there. It's got great numbers of yellow perch. It's got Yellowstone cutthroat and smallmouth bass. So just like all the other things we've talked about already, we have a tremendous diversity of game fish in a lot of our systems here. So people can sort of dial up what they want to chase by what they're using and where they're fishing. Just a great place to have a good chance to catch a lot of different species of fish.
Let's talk about that sturgeon. I mean, that's a lifetime fish. That's like getting a moose tag for some people in the hunting sense. I was lucky enough to hang out with an individual who manages the sturgeon populations in the Snake down by Glenn's Ferry, I think it is, for Idaho Power, making sure that Idaho Power is being responsible and things like that. And just the system to catch a sturgeon was very specific. Is it so specific, or could you be running any kind of lure and all of a sudden be having the question of your life on what's happening?
Well, yeah, sturgeon generally require a lot bigger tackle. And so people are using 8-9 foot heavy action rods spooled with 40 to 60 pound line.
Sure.
And then leaders. We have very specific rules on how the terminal tackle is set up with sliding sinkers, barbless hooks, and lower pound test dropper weights. So just in case they break off, that some fish didn't eat the bait and then become anchored to the bottom.
Yeah.
And so that takes a little bit of learning to learn all that stuff. Upstream in the Snake, where we've stocked a lot of sturgeon, we also stock them downstream as Shoshone Falls, but upstream, especially around Idaho Falls, they tend to be a little bit smaller. They're not quite as big as down here. You might not have to use quite that size of gear around Idaho Falls, but generally we recommend people use adequate size gear so they can fight those fish relatively quickly and get them landed. And
released.
Yep.
Yep. Responsibly follow the rules. I believe we need to keep them underwater the whole time. Or there's some things, those rules and regulations, Google it. Idaho State Fishing Regulations. It'll take you right to the Idaho Department of Fish and Game website and study up a little bit.
Yeah. Portion of their body has to remain in the water at all times.
Yeah.
And they have to be released immediately after capture. And so a fish that lives 60, 80, some even 100 years long, we have to just be really careful with handling mortality after they're caught to make sure that they're there for future generations. And sturgeon is something we're a little bit concerned about in Idaho. Some of our core populations haven't been spawning very successfully very often over the last couple of years. We're really starting to watch that closely and concerned about the two healthiest populations remaining in Idaho, and that's below Bliss Dam and below Hell's Canyon Dam.
Okay. Well, something that might be a growing concern and ever bigger reason to be respectful of those rules and that, I mean, prehistoric animal. I think when I was asking the question, I'm like, could I be running a basic trout line with a panther martin and all of a sudden end up with a sturgeon? I don't think it really happens that way, but boy, it sure tell a story for the rest of your days when that thing goes peeling off that line.
Exactly. Not very often, but sometimes they eat some pretty weird things when people are fishing for other critters.
So Eastern Idaho, any other thoughts on Eastern Idaho? Any other fresh news, recent stocks?
I think those are the big ones. We had a really good spring season at Henry's Lake. Anglers probably not catching as many fish as we have historically there, but the average size was just phenomenal, including some true trophy individuals over there. That was a very positive thing.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to grow up with Grandpa because of Idaho Falls. Henry's Lake and all that stuff. Of course, he was a troller, driving around in the boat. No, well, there's one, you got one. It wasn't like fishing to me, but it's still fishing because I like casting and maybe having the risk of hanging up in a tree or pull it or hitting a rock or something. But yeah, Henry's Lake is just something else. I can't believe it. It's still going.
Amazingly productive system. Yeah, when we have the right water conditions, we get really good survival of stocked fingerlings, and they grow really fast there because it's relatively shallow and productive and just can be phenomenal fishing.
Okay, Roger, we're in where you live, a knowledgeable man of these local areas, without giving away the fish secrets, which any fishing conversation would have a joke of. So I'll save you from that. What comes to mind as we come into the 250th Independence Day of America?
Oh, I love annoying my friends by naming names.
Oh,
Like,
good.
What are you talking? Why are you telling them that?
Absolutely.
Here is my hot spotting of the day. One of my favorite places to fish is the Snake River for smallmouth bass. And they're everywhere in that river, so you're probably not going to be crowded. But it is such a cool river. And the thing that I really enjoy about the Snake is that, and smallmouth fishing, it was kind of my introduction to smallmouth fishing. And I thought that they were largemouth, so I'm throwing big, ugly stuff at every stump willow, everything else.
I mean, you could throw mice, frogs. I mean,
Yeah.
anything you can think of.
And then I was like, well, how come I'm not catching them like in the videos? And then I learned that the Snake River and smallmouth, if you think of it like a giant trout stream, and smallmouth is kind of slower moving trout, but they kind of like the same areas. They like those seams. They like a little bit of current. They like rocky areas.
Yeah, the fast water right into slow water,
Exactly.
right where they're catching
That's
up.
when I started learning to catch smallmouth, and they've intrigued me ever since. And there's just so much area to fish down there. I'll launch a boat, and I won't say where I'm launching my boat.
I was going to say the Snake River is pretty large, my friend. There's lots of places to go look at. No secret here.
Exactly. But that great smallmouth fishery for Southwest Idaho goes everywhere from CJ Strike Dam all the way down Hell's Canyon Dam. So you got a lot of ground to cover there. And you can go down and find your quote unquote secret spot, or you can go down to where practically the freeway crosses it and catch fish there too. So it's just a really fun river to fish. And I think it's kind of in some ways underutilized, even though a lot of people like it. And yeah, I like to fly fish it too. And fly fishing for smallmouth is a lot of fun. So that's my tip of the day, if you will.
I mean, it's right here. It's really not that far. You can access it for so long. I mean, talk about a secret spot. CJ Strike. There's so much area that you can get to. And I can't say that I've been out and adventured at all or done much of all that. But, you can just look at a map, look for the Snake River, and somewhere within a mile or 10, you're probably going to find some leg access. I got to tell you, the boat thing, I don't know what it is with me and boats. You get out there and you're like, well, I hope I can get back. That's a flowing river. So, Joe, talking about the Treasure Valley, was a mega population. We've got Nampa, Caldwell, Boise, all of this stuff. But ultimately, Southwestern Idaho is a large map. Any developments? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a remarkable place, even though there's quite a few people compared to the rest of Idaho here. If you draw a circle around the valley and you drive in a direction for an hour, you can get to some really good fishing that really isn't that crowded. And Roger mentioned smallmouth bass already. We've also got just tremendous channel catfishing. And in the same river reach. There's even now beginning to be more flathead catfish that can grow really large, 30, 35, 40 pounds even in the same sections of river. And this is probably the heyday of smallmouth bass fishing in Idaho. I mean, it's hard to describe like how good it is. All the way from northern Idaho, you've got Pend Oreille and Coeur d'Alene, you've got Dworshak in the Clearwater. The Snake is absolutely loaded with smallmouth bass. Down to Cascade, Brownlee, CJ Strike, just remarkable smallmouth fisheries. And then moving up the Snake River to Eastern Idaho, truly we're lucky with how good the smallmouth bass fishing is in Idaho right now. A 16-incher doesn't even really raise eyebrows.
Really?
It's 18 inches and 20 inches pretty commonly now. Some of these fisheries are even being recognized nationally. We've got people traveling from other states just to target these really quality bass fisheries that we have in Idaho. So I would say that, but kind of getting back to your original question, around here, Arrow Rock, I think is a really good fishery right now. Has smallmouth bass. It's got yellow perch in it that a lot of people probably don't target. It's got decent numbers of those. The kokanee fishery is phenomenal. And then we stock a lot of trout there that are very accessible to shore-based anglers, especially in the spring and fall. Maybe not so much right now in July when the water temperature is a little bit too warm close to shore. So those are some places I'd point to. You guys already mentioned CJ Strike.
Sure.
Just tremendous opportunities there.
I love Arrow Rock for the fact that you can continue, make a lot of left and right turns, but you can continue and get to the river itself. And some of my favorite days, just as you drive that section, you can get all the way back to Atlanta, Idaho. That's a day trip and a half for you just to drive all the way in there, stop and fish along any one of those bouldery sections of the river, and they're just hanging out in pockets. A lot of fly fishing activity because of how you got to get to them. But I just love the concept that you can have, more of a reservoir style fishing and just keep going in the beauty of Idaho's wonder right into river fishing right along the same stretch of road.
Yeah. And I wanted to add one quick story about Joe. This is a few years ago. We got to fish together and we went down to the Snake and he was going to turn me on to some channel catfish. And we launched his boat and we went about, couldn't have been more than a quarter mile from the boat ramp. And he said, okay, we'll start here. And if we don't get any bites here, then, we'll move in a few minutes, we'll move on. And I was like, okay, this seems like a convenient place to start. Joe cast it out and within probably 2 or 3 minutes, the rod was dancing and he reeled in about a 4 or 5 pound channel catfish. So the guy not only knows how to manage fish, he knows how to catch fish too. And we did that pretty much all day long. And we were catching channel catfish from about 4 pounds to 10 pounds. And it was just one of my favorite fishing experiences on the Snake. And Joe knows what he's talking about and he knows how to put fish in the boat too.
Well, it sounds like you can go out and catch fish all day long of many different types. And if you're not prepared, you can catch a sunburn and some dehydration. So you might think about the fact that you might start catching fish. And when you do, you want to be there ready to keep catching them all day long. A little bit of food, a little bit of water, a little bit of sunscreen, wear a hat, whatever. I'm not trying to be your mom or your dad, but hey, I've been there before. So, when you talk about those smallmouth bass, I think of the Bass Pro Shops logo. That's a largemouth bass. But does the smallmouth come flying out of the water in excitement like that fairly often? I mean, I can't think of something more fun than watching one off of the end of your line come jumping out of the water, flipping left and right all over.
Yeah, they're a really fun fish to catch. And especially as we get into summers, and this is something else I'll throw out there. If it helps to have a boat, but again, there's plenty of bank access. As summer gets on, it gets hotter. There's just a ridiculous number of like 10 to 12 inch smallmouths down there. And it's a great opportunity for kids too. It's one of those, sometimes you'll throw a lure out there and you'll hook one and they'll lose it. And before they can reel back in, there'll be another one on the end of the line. So yeah. It gets to be one of those, Dad, I'm tired of catching fish now. Can we go do something else? Yeah.
Oh man, you're like, are you my kid? What just happened? Yeah, I absolutely love that. So we've just covered some ideas in northern, eastern, southwestern Idaho. Again, this is Dylan Stalker, the Great Idaho Show. We're sitting here with Joe K and Roger Phillips of the Idaho Fishing Game. Again, thegreatidahoshow.com. Let's leave this last segment for any extra thoughts, anything you guys would extra like to share as we come into the 4th of July, anything of awareness or, new changes or just current events happening for Idaho Fishing Game.
Well, I'll kick it off real quick. A couple of things. One is we kind of mentioned buying your fishing license. This isn't just, us harping on you to buy a fishing license. It's encouraging you that we've made it really, really easy. If you have cell phone or internet access anywhere in the state, you can get on your phone and you can buy a license through our app. You'll have to, download that app and everything else. But as soon as you do, you get to start fishing immediately. So I think that's a really convenient thing. So folks who aren't sure if they want to go fishing or not, you're out there in the middle of a camping trip, you're standing next to a lake and go, yeah, I think I do want to go fishing. Open up your phone, download that app and buy a license. And it's really easy to do. And then the other thing I wanted to throw out there, and then I'll turn it over to Joe, is mountain lake fishing. Well, I always consider 4th of July weekend kind of the kickoff of mountain lake fishing. I think this year it might have been April Fool's Day. I'm not sure because we didn't really have a winter.
Yeah.
But boy, summers are a fantastic time to get up there and explore those lakes. And that's where I won't name names, but there are literally hundreds of them out there. Incredible opportunity to go explore, see some of Idaho's most scenic country, have a chance for solitude, have a chance to see wildlife, and to catch some some amazing fish in some beautiful places. So that's something that you certainly keep in the back of your mind at least once per summer. Get up there and find some of those lakes and just, create your own adventure.
Well, we got Google Earth now. You can see where all the water is. If there's water in Idaho, it's probably got fish in it. You can see the roads in, and you can also, might consider the onX Hunt app, which will put you on a pin just about anywhere. It's not hard to adventure these days. The outfitter of old is yourself and your cell phone. I'm not sure how I feel about that personally, but hey, there are certainly some benefits. And one thing to add to Roger, you don't need the paper license on that buying through the app. You don't have to wait for something in the mail. You're there right now. You're hanging out with your friend, and you didn't think you were going to go fishing. And then the next thing you know, he's like, I got a pole, I've got everything. What are you going to do? You're going to go fishing, I hope. Take your kids. Joe, what do you got finishing up?
I think I'm going to add some things that we're really excited about in our fisheries division or fisheries bureau right now. And one of those, we're rebuilding one of the largest hatcheries and most productive hatcheries in the state, this Nampa hatchery.
Okay.
South side of Nampa. We produce just hundreds and hundreds of thousands of trout out of there. The facility had gotten older. The concrete was 30 or 40 years old, and the raceway walls were falling in. We had leaking pipes and all of that. And fortunately, we've found the funding to work on basically rebuilding that entire facility and making much better use of the water that we do have available there. We're going to be able to raise much healthier fish in a more efficient fashion. We're very excited about that. And that will be completed in the next, I believe, 1.5 or 2 years. Be very helpful for us getting more fish to more people. Another one that we're really excited about is it's called the Captive Kokanee Broodstock. This is another hatchery program. Historically, we've relied on catching adult kokanee when they migrated up tributary streams at places like Deadwood, North Fork Payette,
sure,
off of Payette Lake, even Dworshak, Mackey Reservoir, some of those places. But those runs have become a little bit more inconsistent. And we're doing some experiments now, actually implementing these experiments where we've taken kokanee into the hatchery, raised them to adults at the hatchery, and we'll be able to collect eggs from adults in the hatchery. So a more controlled environment. We think we're going to be able to produce more kokanee eggs more consistently. So very excited about that. And then the last thing I'll leave it on, we've talked a lot about some of our introduced species of game fish thus far today. We're also working to make sure we're conserving a bunch of native game species, like a bunch of our native cutthroat tend to struggle with interbreeding with rainbows or competition from brook trout. And we're really working on trying to reduce the number of brook trout in very small drainages, not everywhere on the landscape. We can't do that. There's still going to be plenty of brook trout to fish for.
Sure.
But areas that are priorities for cutthroat, we're being more aggressive with excluding rainbows or attempting to suppress the number of brook trout, using weirs, using electrofishing suppression, and sometimes using chemicals. At the same time, we're also working on habitat restoration efforts in these same drainages. And I'm just very excited with the amount of momentum that we have on these conservation efforts for some of our native species.
I love to hear that, the native species that's been here, and it really shows the Idaho fishing game is conscious of not just getting out to catch the fish. It's about the preservation, conservation of the whole fishery concept itself, right? The fact that they're there. I really appreciate you both. Roger, thank you. Joe, thank you for coming on the Great Idaho Show today. We're going to put this out right now. It's June 24th, 2026, coming into 4th of July, and hopefully a long fishing season throughout the rest of the summer. as we get into hunting. Hope to catch up with Idaho Fish and Game again as we get prepped for hunting. This is Dylan Stalker, The Great Idaho Show. Don't forget oldarmsofidaho.com. You're hunting. Goodness gracious. I've been programmed. Oldarmsofidaho.com. Old Arms of Idaho, they are your ambassadors to America's heritage. Firearms, Western, and military collectible specialists. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Y'all have a wonderful day and a great 4th of July.